Hi everyone, if you could grab a seat. I've not had a run through of how to do this, so I'm assuming the questions pop up there. I'm not actually going to introduce my panel because they're going to introduce themselves anyway, so might as well let them introduce themselves. Who's starting?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kurt. I'm a director at Riela Cyber.
And my name's Kurt as well, but not from Riela Cyber. I'm from Digital Isle of Man.
My name's not Kurt, and I'm from C&D City. I'm Jeff Ames.
Does it work?
Yeah. I'm Alan Chambers, and I'm the GCSO in Isle of Man Government, working in Oxford.
So we're a power panel today, and we're going to have 5 minutes presentation from each of the Kurts and the others. So have we got an order, or is it? There you go. We'll, yeah.
You got my slides in? Okay. So we're talking about cyber blind spots today, and the important part of cyber blind spots is to understand your weaknesses or where you need to look. And so I brought up this interesting slide which is called the pyramid of pain. It's quite a well-known process that's used in threat hunting. And basically what this shows is just how easy it is for hackers to get in. So the bottom couple rungs is things that you would know. So hash value would be like your software. So every bit of software has a hash value, and it gets identified by its hash value. Hackers can get around those hash values really easy. IP addresses, also easy. There's loads of IP addresses that can change. So obviously when a hacker will try and hack an environment, they get known. And so their IP address might get listed as a bad actor. They can change it really easily. Same with URLs. URLs are pretty easy. The further up you go the pyramid, the harder it is for hackers to get in. And this is where cybersecurity gets really interesting, because that's where we look at protecting the customers. So the very top, TTPs, which is techniques, tactics, and processes, that's where you're actually looking at traffic that goes on your network, east-west, not just north-south. So north-south meaning it's the data coming in from the top, coming down to the PC, we look across the network. So when you quickly detect and respond, you can disrupt your adversary. This is really important because if you don't know that they're in, most hackers are in for several months. The current stat is 8 months. They can do a lot of damage because they look at what's happening. We'll go to the next slide. Right, so one of the key pillars in looking at your blind spots is asset management. If you don't know what's in your environment, there's no ways you can protect it. So a lot of people get this wrong because asset management isn't just physical assets, it's also digital assets. So it's looking at where your data is, who has access to the data, and how to protect it. And we'll go to the next slide. Okay, and of course, we're humans, we're stupid, we're lazy, and we do a lot of stupid things, and passwords is probably the easiest way to get into anyone's account. So it's at Cyber Isle, I did a talk about social engineering, and your passwords, all of you in this room, very likely already on the dark web and available. If you use common passwords, in other words, you use the same set of sequences, hackers can use that to then take over your account. We recently had an incident where we had a high-profile person who had their account compromised through well-known hacks, and the criminals used that information to easily guess their password. In less than 5 attempts, they got their password. Okay, next slide. So I've got 5 minutes, I've got to run through this really quickly. Who doesn't like a slide with a bit of stats? So 90% of cyber breaches come from some form of phishing. Phishing being emails coming in. We're all the weakest link in your company. The most important thing is the end user, the people, because in your company there'll be someone who makes a mistake, who clicks on a link. And so phishing is a very effective way of hackers getting into your environment. The most widely used style is link clicking, because we all, when we get something in that's really juicy, that thing that you must absolutely have to click on, I've got a voucher or something like that, that's how they're going to get in. Next slide. Okay, just some stats, and there's lots of stats there, but I want to focus just on one. social engineering sites are becoming a huge risk, and I'll use an example. So Ramsay Hotel, they ran a competition recently, and someone that I know entered the competition through social media by saying, posting some friends' names on there. Someone actually created, a threat actor created a Ramsay Hotel social media account and went and liked and posted on every single person that had posted on there, well done, you've won, click on this link. Now, we're all responsible for what we do in social media, but when you start having things where hackers are even looking at the Ramsay Hotel competitions, it's so easy for them to get around normal cyber measures. And that's why blind spots, you don't think about something as simple as linking friends' names on social media, but the hackers use this information, and that's how they create profiles. Next slide. Right, so cybersecurity doesn't have to be complicated. Keep it simple. If you want to do it effectively, it is complicated. But if you start with the basics, it's not complicated. And everyone needs to start doing their own bit to secure your business, your environment at home. Next slide. This is one of them. So training is really important, and I'll hammer home every day with every company that I speak to. If you're not doing effective training, you're not looking after your business. You don't care about your business. So you've really got to look at not only training your users, and CyberSafe is dirt cheap. It's next to you can actually use it for free, push it out to all your customers. But it's not just about training, it's also about leading from the top and educating people from the top down to say, I'll never send you links. Don't click on any links coming in.
Thank
That's
you.
me.
Thank you very much. Kurt, on to Kurt 2.
Okay, do you move the slide on? Right, so I'm going to take the opportunity to walk around as I've got a roaming mic, because I want to point at some of these things on here. So just to introduce me again, I'm Kurt Rosen. I'm Head of Innovation, fantastically grand title at Digital Agency. But I'm tasked with thinking outside the box. So I'm going to try and make you think outside the box today. So we've got lots of erstwhile people who sit at the front edge of attacks and things. I fortunately run away from all of that, so I don't have to deal with that, but think logically about what might happen. Now, I've been in the industry, the IT industry, for 35 years, so why am I doing innovation is the first question you should be asking. But following on from that, it really, IT, technology, goes around in lots of cycles. They may take a long time to come around, and they may come around in different ways, but they reappear. I think I'm one of those people who can sit in a room of innovators and say, yeah, but remember what happened in the tulip bubble of 1637, and that's going to be applied to some of the things here. So I've also worked with the BCS and various bodies, looking at the big things that sit behind this. So my challenge to you, if you move on to the next slide, is what's the new frontier? So we look at things and threats, and a lot of activity over many, many decades has been around banking, finance, because that's where value, where money lives, where people who want to steal something from you actually have a target to go to. Well, and I hasten to add, before I make this next statement, I did this a week ago, and notwithstanding the events of this week, there is a lot of value in crypto, or there was until this week. So actually that's become real value. It hasn't become intangible value. It's become something that you can turn back into real money, back into fiat, or use it to do other things within crypto. So it's now got to the stage where there are actually institutional investors that have crypto as part of their portfolio. So quite apart from being a thing that lives in its own world, this is now a potential target. And what I'd like to do, I'm going to point you towards more information so you can look this all up yourself. But I'm going to run through a number of charts that kind of illustrate that crypto has moved on in a lot of senses from being what some people might perceive as a way to launder money into a thing in its own right that is being attacked, that has its own risks, and doesn't actually have the perception that you'd think of it being safe because it's already in the digital world. Actually, it's safe or unsafe because it's in that digital world. It doesn't exist, it doesn't have the brakes that other financial instruments have. So if you move on to the next slide, this is where I get to point at things, and all of you people can go, I can't read that stuff at the bottom, so I'll point it out to you. So this is total cryptocurrency value by illicit address. By illicit, I mean there's something that has been used for a nefarious purpose. And if you actually go through the years, it's kind of logical that this would be building up. But if you actually look at what's building up there, that area there is scam activity. That area there is stolen funds. So that whole $14 billion in 2021 is somebody inside the crypto world stealing crypto from somebody else in the crypto world. Now that's a bit mind-blowing. That's quite a large number. Go on to the next slide. So if we kind of think about that, one thing you have to put it into perspective of is, okay, that illicit share, that money, a lot's been happening in crypto, so what's it by transaction volume? So if you actually look at it, it's gone up, 2019, but it's still only 3.3% of all the crypto transactions that are happening were related to illicit activity, and it's now gone down to 0.1%. And if you actually look over here, total transaction volume grew to $15.8 trillion in 2021, up 567% from the 2020 totals. So the volume has gone up enormously. So then wouldn't we expect illicit activity to also be going up? Go on to the next slide.
How many more slides, Kurt?
I'll be quick. So, total cryptocurrency laundered. We think of crypto being used for money laundering, but you can look at the numbers there. Again, they look large. But look at this over here. Between 800 billion and 2 trillion of fiat currency is in laundering activity each year, which amounts to 5% of global GDP. Comparison, money laundering within the crypto market is at 0.05% of what it does. So a hundredth of the money laundering activity that exists elsewhere. Now, all I'll do at this point, there are a couple more, but I won't go onto those, is point you to where this is coming from. This is a report, which any of you can get, it's free to download, from a company called Chainalysis. And each year they issue crypto crime. And one last thing I'd say is, how do they do all that? Well, their first point in their report is, crypto crime is easier to track because it's crypto. You can actually see. You might not know who's doing it, but you can see the activity taking place. But my message to you is blind spot. If you've got something in crypto, you're probably more likely to have that stolen than if you have it in the fiat world at the moment. So that's a kind of food for thought about blind spots.
Thank you very much, very interesting. Jeff, come on up, or sit there, whichever you choose.
Hi, next slide, please. So I'm going to ask 3 questions. Yeah. What makes you a target? Yeah. How can we know, and what can we do? Next slide, please. Okay, so the first one, yeah, what makes you a target? Hackers are actually grouped into 3 main elements or names. There's hacktivists, which we hear about all the time, that just do it for whatever political cause that they believe in. We've got state actors, which is quite a lot of activity going on at the moment, as you can imagine, with the Ukraine war that's going on. And then we've got a criminal element, or financial gain. Okay. So, what do they do? How do they go and find out about, how to hack someone or which target they're going to use? Okay. So, it's not usually about you personally. Yeah, they will go and look at the resources available to them on the internet to find out information about a particular group. So if it's financial they're after, they'll go pick up a list of banks. And they'll use something like Shodan, yeah? And they'll look for a particular vulnerability that they know how to exploit. And then from that list of people that have got vulnerabilities, yeah, they'll then pick their target. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, just this, looking at the Isle of Man, we found 435 verified vulnerabilities. There was actually quite some serious stats that came out of this that we found, that we will be talking to Alan about. Next slide, please. And the information gets more and more detailed. It's actually just a complete library of how they can hack you. There's lots of different protocols and ports of information and details on how they can actually target you. Next, please. So, as you can see by this statement, I think you might be familiar with this one, he actually said it was just a name at the time that actually looked worthy of attacking at that time. He didn't care who it was. He knew what the vulnerability was that he could attack, and he just found a victim. Next slide, please. So what can we do? How can we know? The biggest thing that we find is a lot of companies out there actually invest in technology to protect their infrastructure. They've got firewalls, they've got antivirus, they've got policy control within their servers, etc., but nobody actually looks at the logs. They don't have the staff, they don't have the time. It's very rare that a company's got dedicated staff actually looking at this, especially for the smaller companies. Next slide, please. This is an example of what we would see in a ransomware attack. It's a load of file names being changed. So if nobody's actually monitoring and looking at those log files, how do you actually know anything's going on with your environment? And the big thing with all of this is actually speed of response. The faster you know that this is going on, the quicker that you can react, and the quicker you can mitigate the damage and carry on working. Next slide, please. So, what can we do? We can monitor. We can review. I've lost my notes, so I do apologise.
Check.
We can check, or we can research, and we can plan. What do I mean by this? So monitor. Monitor means have somebody actually go and review your logs. Make sure everything's configured properly. You've spent the money on this equipment. Go and make sure it's working. Make sure it's alarming correctly to actually tell you what's going on within your network. Okay. The next one was review. Review. So if you don't know what information is out there on resources like Shodan, etc., you're all connected to the internet. You all present this information, and people are gathering this information. So things like vulnerability scans are very important when it comes to this type. Find out what you're actually presenting to the internet. Okay, check. Make sure that you're actually checking that everything is configured correctly. The amount of times that we see services that are connected to the internet that should never be there. And it's actually quite shocking. Okay. Research is there, again, it's part of the go and have a look in Shodan. There's lots and lots of other research resources out there. Go and find out what's there about you. Find out what they're saying. Find out what vulnerabilities people can attack you. And the last but most important thing is plan. Okay? And I guarantee nearly everywhere we go, no one has run an exercise for a cyber incident. It's very rare that it happens. And the biggest thing here is be able to recover and actually know what to do when it happens. You all not to know what to do when you have a fire drill and a fire goes off because you practice it. It's exactly the same with a cyber incident. That's all.
Amazing, thank you very much. Maybe we should have that in legislation. You must have, if you've got more than 5 employees, you must have a cyber plan in place.
And it's there in a lot of the security frameworks. And lots of people are starting to take notice of these now, as they have to. But I think it's actually you need to enforce it, unfortunately. So.
Thank you very much.
Wow, full of that. Mine's not going to be as technical or as high level as these 3 learned gentlemen, but what I want to do is try and give you some stats that we see in Oxia, which are coming from across the island. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Alan Chambers. I work in the Office of Cyber Security and Information Assurance, which is part of government, and we produce the National Cyber Security Strategy for the Isle of Man, and it's our job to try and deliver it in conjunction with the other departments of government. So, when you're ready, sir, please. Right, these are some stats that we're seeing at the moment. So in the last 12 months, we have had officially reported to us 4 ransomware incidents. And I say officially reported, it's the Isle of Man. We know there are a lot more out there, but we've had 4 reported, and when they're reported, we can provide advice, guidance and a response and put you in touch with the right people to try and protect you and stop it becoming worse. Because the longer, as these gentlemen have told you, the longer it takes for you to react, the more damage it does, and the longer it will take to recover afterwards. We go out and we educate, and we did Cyber Isle a couple of weeks ago for trying to spread the gospel of cybersecurity across the island. What we need here is, everything these guys have told you is great, but underneath it all you've got to have some really basic cyber hygiene. So we're getting people now, they're reporting to us. We've had 9,000 emails reported in the last couple of years since we launched our suspicious email reporting service, which means people are recognising the phishing emails, the dodgy ones, and they're telling us about them. On the back end of that, we work with the National Crime Agency and the National Cyber Security Centre in the UK. They strip all the intelligence out of these dodgy emails, the dodgy phone numbers, the URLs, the email accounts, and then they recognise, because they're not in the Western world, they're in dodgy jurisdictions, the likelihood of actually catching them is very remote. So they take a disruption attitude, and they'll take down those links and websites and email addresses to stop other people becoming victims. And it does work. We've seen a 25% increase in business email compromises being reported to us and spear phishing attacks compared to 2021. And 40% of phishing attacks and smishing attacks. I don't know whether you've heard of phishing and smishing, but phishing is phishing with voice. So it's this is your bank, I'm calling to tell you there's someone in our bank that's a bit dodgy and you need to move your account, so can you take all your money out, stick it in a biscuit tin and send it to us and we'll look after it for you. Those sorts of scams. So we're seeing all that stuff going on, but what we're trying to advocate is that everybody, personal or in business, needs to do some very basic cyber hygiene. Bear with me.
Next slide.
Thanks. Technology. Is it the answer? Well, technology does have its place, but as you've already heard, a lot of these phishing attacks are aimed at the human being. So that's your first line of defence, and also probably your weakest point in business. If you don't invest in making your staff aware, the human finger can subvert most technologies just by pressing the mouse button. That doesn't mean you don't have technology. Technology does have a place, and all the reviewing of logs, etc., are necessary. But a lot of these phishing attacks we're seeing are what I declare as shotgun attacks. They're not targeted at individuals. Cybercrime is a business, and all they're after is money. And they wouldn't send these emails out if they didn't actually have a result coming off them. And it's so cheap to send these dodgy emails out, you just get flooded with them. In fact, we probably see more dodgy emails than we see real ones these days. So, business level. We in Oxia find it very hard, and I'm sure the IT companies and the cyber incident response companies find it very hard to get through the door of a lot of companies, and this is what we call a boardroom problem. Cyber security, cyber risks are no different to any other business risk. It's something that has to be managed, and before you can manage it, you have to understand it. A lot of the time, these people will go and they'll offer services and they'll say, you need this, you need that, you need the other. But unfortunately, the business isn't prepared to look at how much it's going to cost. They just want, I just want Word, or I want a mailing program. They have to look at the risks, they need to understand the risks. That is what Oxia is about. If you're stuck, we can't tell you who to go to, but we can give you some advice and guidance. And we would encourage you to try and understand what your business risk is, because once you understand it, you can manage it, and if you can manage it, you can mitigate it. Thanks, sir. So, touched on it before, basic cyber hygiene, some very, very simple things, and there's a lot of different variants of what cyber hygiene is, but I've pulled out 5 pieces here. Patching vulnerabilities. Jeff alluded to it before, Showdown, when it scans the internet, it's looking for vulnerabilities. If you have a regular patching regime, you keep your systems up to date, then they can't take advantage of those vulnerabilities because they don't exist. Use strong passwords. Don't use the same ones. You can go online quite easily and you find a list of regularly used passwords, and there are password checkers out there to tell you if your password's been compromised or not already. Make sure you've got antivirus and anti-malware software, and it is regularly updated, and that will save you a bit of trouble as well. Firewall, if you've got a firewall or a personal firewall, make sure it's enabled, configured correctly. And what I think most importantly, because out of the incidents I've attended on the Isle of Man in ransomware, make sure that you have a secure backup that is not on the same network as the stuff that's been encrypted. Because I've been to 4 jobs where they've not had any backups that they can recover because they've been encrypted as well. And that's very important to getting your business back up and running if you do get hit. What else have I got?
I don't want to...
The end.
Thank you. So we've got 2 questions in on the Slido, and will it go back up for the QR code on the Slido on the screen? So if you've got more questions, which I'm sure you do have, put them, send them to Slido. So we've got one, and I'll start with these before we go to my pre-thought of questions. In terms, so Brian said, in terms of vulnerability, do you see particular departments or particular types of software developers being particularly likely to be targeted, or for that matter, successfully targeted? Anyone want to take that?
So I think Jeff alluded to it in his relating to code. The honest answer is that hackers don't differentiate. They go after the easy target. Now, in reality, the easy target in any company is normally reception or finance. Finance hold the keys to your kingdom. They own the bank accounts. And so generally, especially with phishing attacks, a lot of that can come in targeting the finance department. However, if they find a hole, they're going to get in. And it's not like it's rare that they target. So I think state actors will generally target a company, but most hackers just farm out. They have their little spiders that creep around and they look for these vulnerabilities, and if they find one, they exploit it. Then they listen, and when they get a foothold, they look at, okay, is this information useful? Is this valuable? Can I attack it? Very often, the ransomwares are so small, the actual cost of them is so small because the effort is minimal. So while there are some people that do get targeted, in reality, you're just an unfortunate statistic if you do get hacked, or not if, when you get hacked.
Anyone else want to add anything? Yeah, we've got Jeff.
I think I'd like to add to that is not necessarily if someone gets targeted. I think probably the most dangerous users within a company are the people that have elevated privileges. Okay, because when any of these attacks come in, whatever it may be, virus, ransomware, phishing, however it's been delivered, they inherit the permissions of the user that's actually clicking on them. So one group I always have particular fun with is devs, yeah, because the developers always have admin passwords, yeah, and admin credentials. So what I try and do is get them hived off into a separate development area, and this is usually my advice. So yeah, always review your permissions, always give people the lowest level of permissions, and that will help.
I was just going to add to that, kind of going back to this crypto theme. There was a section there that was saying about stolen funds and scams and how many billions of dollars were happening through that. The largest area of that was a thing called rug pulls. Rug pulls are where someone creates a crypto and accumulates money because people buy it using either crypto or fiat, and then they just pull the rug on it. It just disappears and they take the money away. Now, if you think about it, all of the other strategies that we talk about, are looking for validation. So if you get an email, you're trying to validate that it's a real one from a real place. If you've got something from a bank, you're trying to validate it from a real bank. In the crypto world, that's harder to do. It's not impossible, but it's harder to validate that is something that is real as opposed to something that has an intent to take your money away from you. So that's a kind of community vulnerability. It's a way of doing scams that relies upon the community thinking that nobody in that community is going to take money away from them, but there are clearly bad people in all of these communities that we have to be aware of.
Thank you very much. Kev sent in a really interesting question. Keep the mic, Kurt too. Should the Isle of Man government be concerned about the Shodan vulnerabilities identified on Isle of Man IP addresses? Is this bad for our island's reputation if basics like patching aren't followed?
I'm actually not sure that is one for me.
So it's an interesting question because I don't understand. So Shodan, it's like Google. If you want to go on a holiday, you Google, you find a cheap holiday. The hackers, you can use Shodan to look at what's your external IP address and look at it. And I was shocked when I saw like big corporations in the Isle of Man that have open vulnerabilities with a high severity rating. So when there's a vulnerability, there's a rating that the industry looks at. This how difficult is it to exploit, and how difficult, and what are the privileges that that exploit gives. Now, anything above 8 is really bad. So if you've got a high rating above 8, you should patch your system. And yet there's systems out there that are running with higher CVs than 8, sometimes 9 and 10. And I just think, this is your business. Surely you should look after your business, because the hackers get in, they compromise it. Mention backups. If you don't have air gap backups, then you lose everything. It's ironic that this is, the two cyber companies on the Isle of Man, and we tell you what to do. It's like free advice, and yet no one takes our advice. And that's the reality, because everyone thinks that it's complicated, but if you follow the basic steps, you can protect your business. And yet there's companies that are running with vulnerabilities.
I think part of the question is reputational damage. Will the Isle of Man get any more reputational damage because of this? I don't think they will, because we've narrowed in on the Isle of Man here to show relevance, okay? But it's across the planet. No, it doesn't matter where you go. Yeah. So reputational damage, no. What I would like to say is that NCSC over across has actually started a new program this week, trying to assess the vulnerabilities of the whole of the UK, to see what their state is right now and how bad things are. So I'm quite looking forward to seeing what the results of that are.
Lovely, thank you. A bit of a hot topic for me, I sat on a digital skills in cyber at the Cyber Isle the other week. What is the best way for young people to get into cybersecurity roles, perhaps going from education?
What is not the best thing to do is to try and hack things, let's put it that way. There are various programs that we've kind of developed over the years that we need to develop further. We have a cybersecurity degree. I know that's kind of a stage on. We have activities in the Code Club here. I don't know how many people are aware that our people in the Code Club, including one here in the audience, actually wins the Cyber Centurion competition every year. That's across the UK. So they keep showing that we've got cyber skills here. And we need to encourage more of those type of activities, the positive affirmation of saying being in this area can create a career for you. You can do the right things rather than the wrong things, and embed that into the successes that we're already seeing.
What are you looking for when you're hiring people? What are you looking for in terms of the sort of skills that they have?
Passion. Yeah, that's what we look for. Somebody who actually really wants to do this job. It's really, in this day and age, I don't know if it's the right thing to say, but it's not just a 9 to 5 job. Okay, when you wake up in the morning, sometimes I actually dread switching the news on, right? Because I switch the news on and I go, oh my God, what have I got to alert my customers about today? what's going on. Usually, I mean, take phishing for example, if there's some disaster going on, that used to be the subject of it, turned around very quickly into a phishing email and sent straight away, so we'd have to say, well, look for these type of emails, etc., etc. That was a little while ago. But going back to what do we look for? Somebody who's good at maths. Yeah, when you get down really basic within IT security, it's all ones and zeros, it's all binary. So somebody who's good at maths and somebody who really wants to and enjoys it.
How good at maths? Like,
well, if they can do 0 and 1, they're fine.
I'm in. Kurt, what do you?
Yeah, so I just want to add, I mean, cybersecurity is not going away. So anyone, if there's anyone here that's got kids that's remotely interested in coding or computers, cybersecurity is here to stay, and the hackers are only getting cleverer, and there's going to be more companies compromised. So it's a great career path to enter into, because there are lots of paths to it. So Jeff mentioned the maths. That's more on the development side. That's actually understanding how the hackers get in. But you can also look at analysts. An analyst is looking at data, and so that's the ability to look at what's there that shouldn't be there. And an analyst position, I mean, it requires unique skills, because you're actually looking through loads and loads of code, which the more advanced cybersecurity guys would present information and say, okay, this is how you find potential anomalous activity, and so you need to be able to spot those, and it takes a special individual to do that. I mean, we're always looking for people. It's hard to find the right people, and it's a great career to be in. It's exciting. It's always changing.
Thank you very much. I'm just giggling to myself here, because I'm looking at, I'm talking about hackers, and I'm looking at Anonymous, all on these. So Anonymous asks, you say about a young person not starting their education by hacking someone. Do the local Isle of Man police have the skill set to track a local hacker? Is that one for the end over there, or am I throwing someone in the deep end?
Not throwing anyone in the deep end. I think it very much depends on how capable that young hacker is as to whether they'll get caught or not. The police over here do have capability. They can lean on both the skills in our office, although they are limited, and also the National Crime Agency, and our links through our office. We have links with National Cyber Security Centre in the UK, National Cyber Security Centre in Ireland, NATO, and the National Crime Agency. So we do, and once you get into the National Crime Agency, you get into Interpol and Europol. We do have reach, and we do have access to capable resources. It depends whether the crime that's being committed will attract those capable resources to solve it or not. I don't know if that answers it, but at the basic level, I would say yes, we have the skills on the island to do it. The more complex, we'd probably have to lean on someone else.
Did you add?
I was just going to add, we have 2 cybersecurity companies here that might be trying to track you down as well, because you've hacked something that they're managing. So I don't want anyone to kind of leave here with the message that if you try and hack here, you won't be caught, because I think you probably will be. So don't take it up as a profession, or at least not a long-term one.
Yeah, there are better ways to learn, okay? Is the best way to describe it. You can do virtual labs, there's root me challenges, there's hack me challenges, etc., etc. There's plenty of legitimate ways to learn how to do this, is the way I would describe it.
And maybe just to add, for those of you, Uber was hacked recently. That was a 17-year-old in the UK, and I think he was arrested about 2 weeks after the incident happened. So, unfortunately, and this is the important bit, is that, hacking, there's specific rules around what you're allowed to do on a company's interface. If you scan a company, that's illegal if you're using hacking tools. So it's important to educate kids as well, that they're not trying to educate themselves by breaking laws, and that's why don't do it.
Don't do it, kids. So we're just coming up to the last couple of questions now, I think. So what's the best thing or things that I can do to avoid being hacked personally? I think we might have covered some of those off in the presentations, but just to reiterate.
I think the list is long, but we'll start with the basics. Use a password manager, okay? The biggest problem out there is people are lazy, okay? And it's difficult to remember multiple passwords. So the biggest thing is use a password manager. Second one, multi-factor authentication, okay? You could lose all your passwords, you could become part of a breach, and you not know about it for a little while. But if you've got multi-factor authentication and it's going to a device that you've actually got in your hand, yeah, that's going to help quite a lot. And the last bit of advice I'll give before I hand over is be careful what you post out there. Yeah, be really careful what you post out there. Because remember all those questions that you asked to recover your passwords are probably all over Facebook.
So I'll add to don't click on anything. Don't click on anything in any email. Doesn't matter if you trust the person. You can copy and paste the URL or go to the original URL. Clicking on a link in an email is just bad behavior because the hackers will obfuscate. They'll hide what they're trying to do or where you're getting to. And once you've clicked, if you're going to a malicious site where they're downloading, you think you can stop it by pulling the plug or switching a computer off. It's done, it's on your machine, they've got it. The other thing that I would add is, patching is really important, not just from your Microsoft operating system, but also your browsers. You ignore all the software on your machine. Very often that in itself creates vulnerabilities. Most of us at home, our systems are a little bit protected because we have a router. The router stops incoming attempts on most software. But if you make yourself a target by posting links and doing stupid things on social media, then it opens you up. And social engineering, especially if you work for a big important company, and it can be very dangerous.
Thank you very much. Who is liable if my 15-year-old hacks a company? We don't have any lawyers on the panel, so
I can't give a qualitative answer to that, but I have heard of a case where the parents were held liable as well. And that was in the UK because they weren't of legal age and they weren't being guided properly and they were using the resources within the house. But I don't know what the official legal answer is, but stop your kids doing it.
We've got 1 minute left, is that right? Yeah. Very quickly, there's too many things here. Crypto, should we go crypto for the final one? Can you agree, or would you agree, that crypto is only at risk when stored on exchanges? When transferring crypto to a cold storage wallet, you own your own keys and they can't be compromised unless given.
Yes, I agree. There are obviously caveats to do that. Along that route to getting it to that point, you will have exposed something. If there was something that was watching you do that, then there is still the possibility to get that back and use keys that you've provided on some machine along the way. It depends on timing more than anything on that one.
Wonderful, thank you so much.
Excuse me, I want to say something about that. You know that you can't produce your private keys offline and no one asks you to watch it?
As I said, there are. It was a potential I was talking about rather than being able to mitigate it.
But you can't produce your keys, you can't produce. You can.
Hero with a mic.
Yeah, thank you. So you can generate your Bitcoin address completely offline, and also you can generate your private keys completely offline, so no one has to look at that. You can have your proper cold storage in a piece of paper. You can put that in a safe and no one will have access to that. On top of that, you can have multi-signature, you can have the grading signatures, and you can have backups for that wallet that you have just created. So actually the risk of hacking is pretty much minimum.
But what I'd say is, and this is kind of what we're saying about everything, is there are always ways to protect certain things, but people won't always do that. So a lot of people wouldn't go to that degree to do it because they weren't realising it was a potential problem. So yeah, absolutely, you can always find a solution, and you need to find a solution which kind of fits within your own personal risk profile, so how much effort you're prepared to put in to protect something. We all use, well, a lot of people use contactless cards. Now they're risky, but we accept the risk because they're relatively low value. So it's all about kind of risk reward. I think what we're kind of intimating is that you need to think about that risk reward profile and act appropriately given what you feel it needs to be protected.
I think we all do that on a daily basis, so we don't cross a highway just through the middle. We use the specific paths to cross that. So the same with your money, the same with your family.
True. But if we all did it, we wouldn't get it. No one would be happy.
And say, you two get together after. Thank you so much. Sorry for the questions we didn't quite get to. Thankful that we didn't get to my questions because it would have been really tough. And thank you very much to the panel.